Hey, y'all, I'm Bud Elliott, and this is Cover 3 College Football Summer School. We've done our research on the teams, and now we're bringing on the top team experts from the 247 Sports Network to help us fill in the blanks. Please follow us on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast. That's Cover 3 Podcast. And leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. All right, class is in session. Hey, guys, welcome back in to the Cover 3 Podcast Summer School Edition. Now it's time to talk a little Stanford, and nobody better to do that with, of course, than Jackson Moore of Cardinal247. Jackson, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bud.
I'm excited to talk a little Stanford here. Last year, 3-9, kind of a difficult season to watch. The advanced metrics, power ratings, whatnot, seemed to support the 3-9 season. Most had them kind of outside the top 100. I guess we should kick this off, and maybe I'll give you something you can answer in a positive fashion right off the bat. Was that a bottoming out?
I would sure say so. I mean, and it's also, I mean, you look at their season. They start off with wins against, USC and Oregon. You never would have thought they would have just totally plummeted the way they did. And it wasn't just the way they lost all those games consecutively to end the year, but I mean, the margins, and they just did not look competitive. They had some games that were close, but they had some ugly losses, like historic, like haven't happened for decades at Stanford kind of losses. So hopefully that's bottoming out. If it's not, they're going to need to make some changes sooner rather than later. But hopefully it is. They had a lot of injuries last year. I don't think they really resembled what the roster should have ever looked like for a lot of the season. And hopefully when they get all the pieces together this year, they'll look a little different.
So let's start with the offense here. Stanford traditionally under Harbaugh and obviously under Shaw typically are known for having a really good rush offense, and yet all the efficiency metrics say that was one of the very worst offenses in all of college football, despite the fact they did try to rush often. That on an efficiency basis, not particularly good. Is there any real hope that gets better this year? What were sort of the main problems, and where do you see that going?
Yeah, I think, you just point to the O-line more than anything, which is not something you're used to seeing being a weakness at Stanford. They did bring in a new O-line coach. They had a pretty young group of offensive linemen. None of them were seniors, so they're all back. So kind of cross your fingers that they all progress quite a bit from last year to this year, that they click a little bit better, that the players can really take advantage of a full year to get ready. And I mean, there's not a lack of perceived talent recruiting-wise, but they're probably going to have to roll out the same 5 guys or so and hope for the best next season, because otherwise, I mean, they have a lot of talent at the skills positions. Of course, Tanner McKee, one of the best quarterbacks in his class, and when outside of his injuries, performed pretty well given the circumstances. They have a ton of just huge receiving targets at receiver and tight end. That was about the only thing they had working for them last year. So if they can get the running game going, which is going to be a task for them, they lose Austin Jones and Nate Pete, who both hit the transfer portal. But E.J. Smith had a really good spring, the son of Emmitt Smith. And they've also got a guy, Casey Filkins, another young running back. I think they're really excited about what those two guys can do if they have the blocking to let them do what they can.
No doubt about it. Passing offense, not nearly as bad as the rushing offense with Tanner back and those guys. And can this be a top 50 or 60 unit as opposed to, like bottom 100? How big of a jump do you think that they'll take?
Yeah, they revealed some weapons last year. They had Ben Yurosek and Elijah Higgins both really take big steps and be big targets, but they've got a lot of other guys too that just couldn't stay on the field. Michael Wilson was hurt all year. Bryson Tremaine had that ugly injury against Oregon in that win, and they've got some other receivers as well. So with the full cast, I mean, it could be a much more diverse passing offense. I mean, the majority of Stanford's passing game last year was throwing to those tall receivers, and not a lot of corners can stop it, and the fades in the end zone. And so this is, I think, going to be a more well-rounded passing game that's going to be able to do some more work through the middle of the field and not have to rely on being so one-dimensional, even though it was one thing that was kind of working for him.
Awesome. All right, so we're joined here by Jackson Moore of Cardinal247 on the Summer School Series. Let's go ahead and switch over and talk a little Stanford defense. I guess I'll go negative first and then maybe positive to end it. The top 4 guys on the defensive line are all gone. Is that a bad thing? Like, the defense wasn't actually good last year, so I'm not really Normally, I'm saying that's a bad thing, but is it?
Well, the cupboard's a little bare right now. They had just 6 defensive linemen in spring this year. One of them was hurt, and 1 or 2 of those other guys are walk-ons, which usually Stanford does pretty well with walk-ons. But
Wait, 2 of the 6 were walk-ons?
I mean, they've got some work to do on the D line, and the other thing they're doing this spring is that they have focused more to a 4-man D line than a 3-man D line. So there's going to be more of those guys on the field. They're going to incorporate the offense or the outside linebackers more as defensive ends. So that's going to change things a little bit. But yeah, I think more than anything, they're not going to have as much talent on the D line this year, definitively. But the scheme might be something that fits those players better and takes more of the pressure off of the D line and more to the edge rushers and the outside linebackers and the inside backers, which they have a lot more talent at those spots.
For sure. Yeah. I was looking, they definitely had some good pass rushers at some of those outside and inside linebacker spots. So if some of those guys play D end, in your estimation, they have the depth, the existing depth at linebacker to allow that not to take a step back at the backer position, even if you're swapping some of those guys to D end.
Yeah, they've got quite a few outside linebackers, and like 3 of the top recruits in this class that they just brought in are all going to be edge outside linebacker kind of guys. David Bailey, the top recruit in their class, got in for the spring, and he was already taking some first team reps this spring. So, I mean, they've got quite a few options there, and I think ideally they want to have more kind of a 4-man defensive line, but with the talent they have at the edge position, they're basically going to be the ends.
Secondary should be the strength of the defense, I would assume.
Yeah, we didn't even get to see Patrick Fields this spring. They think he's so polished that they didn't have to push him.
Was from Arizona State?
Coming from Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, excuse me, yes.
And so, I mean, that's a big deal. They had Jonathan McGill, who's kind of a do-it-all defensive back who missed 10 games, came back for 2, had 2 picks in those 2 games, so showed how much they missed him. And, I mean, Caillou Bukele at corner, I mean, he's going to be an NFL guy. So, yeah, we didn't get to see a whole lot of it at spring besides McGill because so many players were recovering and rehabbing. But once that group's in full force, that's going to be definitely the strength, the most polished group and the most experienced group on defense.
I usually in most of these segments with the discussion about the transfer portal and going hunting in the portal, Stanford with its academics, I imagine, has a narrower pool that it can shop in, so to speak. If I can mix my metaphors, do you anticipate them using the portal more in the off season? Are they spoken about that? Places where they need to add depth? Just after our conversation, now I'm thinking D-line for sure. Any idea what they might do there?
Yeah, it's just extremely rare. Basically they can only take grad transfers, and grad transfer at Stanford is a very difficult hurdle to pass. In fact, something that fans and just college football fans in general should really understand about Stanford is that they're not having many super seniors. Most of those guys that are 5th and 6th year seniors at most schools can't get into grad school, and they hit the portal as grad transfers. And there's no reaction at Stanford like, oh my gosh, this 5th year, 6th year guy hit the portal. It's just expected because of the way things work there. And I think that's part of the reason why you see their high school classes ranked so high. They know how many scholarships they're going to have. They're aggressively pushing for high schoolers, and they basically, out of what they can't do at all, they're not putting much effort into the portal. So a guy like Fields is going to be pretty rare for them. Hopefully you'll see maybe 1 or 2 of those guys each year, but yeah, I don't see them maybe finding more than 1 more this offseason to be that kind of guy for him.
It kind of off script here for a minute, if you'll indulge me, but do you feel this is just kind of something I've been noticing over the years, and I wanted to pick your brain about it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at like their power ratings, 2012 through 2018, they averaged like 18th in the nation. Pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
Last 3 years, 88th, 60th in the abbreviated COVID year, and in last year, 105th. And if you track that, that's basically the first 3 years where the early signing period really took effect, which I know David Shaw was the most vocal opponent of the early signing period that I can remember when I covered that issue when it was coming up for a vote. Is this as big of an issue as far as Stanford talent acquisition as it appears to be just on the outside if you kind of try to draw a relationship from that? And what, if anything, are they doing to help that? Because I know that last year they just signed a really nice class.
Yeah. So they have now started allowing early enrollees, which has brought them at a more even playing field. I don't think they've only taken 2 last year, the first time ever. They had 3 this spring. And so I would assume that they're still kind of expanding that. I think more of those guys probably would have been eligible to do that. But just even at the spring game, the question was posed to David Shaw, how many guys did you miss out on because they wanted to enroll early and it wasn't an option here? And he said, I couldn't even start naming the list. There's so many guys. And I mean, top end players, of course. So that's been definitely hamstringing them. And it's not as big of an issue anymore now that they've kind of solved that with the admittance process. And they seem to have worked through that. They had really good results with the 5 guys they've brought in as early enrollees so far. And they seem to be getting the green light to expand that.
Awesome. Jackson Moore, Cardinal247. Make sure you follow him for all of his awesome summer updates. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
All right, that's the bell. Cover 3 College Football Summer School is over for today, but don't worry. We'll be back soon with even more episodes filling you in on the top teams in college football. Please give us those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on YouTube and on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast, and we'll see you all soon.